Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
In a world ravaged by a pandemic, a small part of society called Film Twitter sits huddled in underground bunkers watching screening links of Godzilla vs. Kong on an iPhone or using a VPN to get the 4-week-long version of Justice League, clinging to the hope that one day they would emerge from their cocoons into the light to dance like Mad Mikkelsen at the end of another round as they make their way to sit in another darkened room, sat 2 to 3 seats away from other people to collectively enjoy the experience of watching a movie on the big screen. Now, this May, 2 men donned face masks to see if the magic was still there. We had the Return of the Jedi, Return to Oz, Return of the Living Dead, and the Return of the King. Now, it's Return to the Cinema. I'm Dallas King, and hello, welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party. It's been 170 days since I last saw a film at the cinema, but for my co-host, I think it has been even longer. Lee Hutchison, how are you? How have you coped? And are you ready to once again have a tasty debrief?
Yeah, I'm so glad the cinemas have come back. It seems like the longest winter possible. Like, I can't believe we've had so long without cinemas. Like last year, what was it, a couple months really? You know, we kind of closed in March, open again in June, was it, for Tenet? So that felt like,
I think it was July.
Yeah.
I think it was July, and then we got to about, was it like mid-September, October? And then I was lucky enough to be in a level 2 city for 2 days and managed to see Wonder Woman 1984 on the big screen. But for you, yeah, I guess it must have been like end of September. It was the last trip to the cinema, which would be...
Yeah, I think it was end of October for me. I kind of remembered like Cineworld had shut maybe around September time, and I was kind of lucky enough that I still had a View here, and View kept kind of ongoing with like retro screenings. And for folk that have listened to this podcast, I have many failings when it comes to horror movies that I've yet to see, and I think I pretty much spent all of October going back and forth to the View to fill those holes.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, they were doing a run up into they had like screams and carries, and basically you were filling out the gaping holes in your filmography. So Kim couldn't tease you anymore for missing out on all the horror films. So, I mean, I was looking back at our back catalogue of podcasts, our last new film review that we sat down to talk to together. I mean, actually, that's the thing, because we actually haven't talked to each other on the podcast for about over a month, because there's just been nothing to review. But the last one was over a month ago, and it was Godzilla vs. Kong. The last time we both sat down to review a film we each saw at the cinema, I think, was back in August for Tenet. So... personally, I think we've done pretty well to have kept generating content all this time, and a huge thanks to all of our guests who've appeared on the podcast over the last 9 months. But I'm glad to say that we have finally been back to the cinema, and we have some new films to review. I say new films, they were probably all films which were meant to have come out last year, but they're finally here. I know that I was focusing on films which I had not seen before. I know in the next couple of weeks, I think you're sort of planning to hit up the film house to catch all the Oscar contenders, which you watched on a small screen at home, but want to get a bit more of that big screen experience.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm most kind of looking forward to, is like there's so many films that I watched kind of tail end of last year, even sort of at the virtual London Film Festival, and then into screener season, then awards season, where you're getting links, you're getting kind of access to these things, and it's great to see them. But like I was kind of not underwhelmed, but I was, whelmed but with just like some
you
of these
can
films.
be whelmed in Europe.
Yeah. So I was kind of like, yeah, these films are good. Some I thought were better than others. But kind of getting back to the cinema, and I'm sure we'll touch on it, one of the films that I thought was good became great being able to see it in a cinema, and I'm excited about the kind of the weeks ahead for like First Cow, Minari, Sound of Metal, films like that. That I'm just desperate to see. I'm ready for that second phase of kind of the new releases coming in.
Absolutely. So we emerged from our cocoons. The green light was given for cinemas to reopen on Monday, the 17th of May. Many of us, myself included, had booked the 17th of May off, only to find out that their local independent wasn't going to open until the 31st of May, and Cineworld were not opening until the 19th of May. So that just left me with The View. So I cancelled my day off and decided to go for evening screenings, because I think it's fair to say that even though we can get back to the cinemas are still playing it slightly safe in terms of reduced run times. So whereas you could normally watch a film anytime, like on the hour, every half hour, potentially from like 10 o'clock through till 10 o'clock, they're being a bit more reserved, taking baby steps at the moment. So maybe reduced numbers of screenings starting around about 12 o'clock and then maybe finishing about 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. So I did a double bill on my first day. I went for a new film. I went with Spiral from the Book of Saw and a classic screening of Total Recall, the kind of film that you see on the cinema that just makes you wish you had three hands. And then I also managed to catch, once cinema reopened at the weekend, I managed to catch Those Who Wish Me Dead. So, Lee, what have you managed to catch in your first week back at the movies?
Yeah, it's been a kind of mix for me. The first screening I went to see, I finished work up on the Monday at 4 o'clock, and then at 20 past 4, I was already sitting in a screen watching Taxi Driver, the Martin Scorsese film that my last time I attempted to watch this film in a cinema, had never seen it. It's always been on my watch list, and I think it goes back to the first time I tried to watch this film was maybe about 12, 13 years ago at the cinema, when I was about 20. And unfortunately, I went to see it at the Film House, and it was like a Sunday night retro screening. Finally get to experience Taxi Driver the way it should be. And it was the night of, I think it was like the fireworks at Edinburgh to mark the end of the Fringe. And there was a power cut, which ended Taxi Driver about 30 minutes into the film. And there was no chance of the power being fixed in time, so the screening was cancelled. And they were going to put it back on again a few weeks later, but it kind of fell through. I imagine the print had to go elsewhere. So unfortunately, I've had a long, 13, 14 year wait to see Taxi Driver again, so I went to see that. I followed that up a couple of days later. I kind of went down at home, Lars von Trier Depression Trilogy rewatch, which was, God knows what happened there. But I also went to see Spiral from the Book of Saw. I then went to see Nomadland. I went to see a Cineworld preview screening of the upcoming Picture House movie Frankie. And last night I had a last minute trip to see The Unholy, which only came around because I turned up to see Judas and the Black Messiah. I was like, I want to see that on a big screen too. But it was all sold out at 20 past 4. So they were like, The Unholy's on in 10 minutes, or The Book of Saw. So I went with The Unholy.
Fair enough. Yeah, so I mean, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Taxi Driver, because a lot happens in Taxi Driver in the final 30 minutes, I think it's fair to say. So, yeah, we can get back onto that one. But I guess the one movie which we have both seen on the big screen is Spiral from the Book of Saw, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who is a Saw alumni, having directed the sort of second and third parts of the film. This was announced a couple of years ago, with Chris Rock coming on as actor, executive producer, and writer, looking to take the Saw franchise in a different direction. Basically, because the standard formula of the Saw movies had basically been done to death, pardon the pun, by that point. And this is essentially a sort of Seven-esque style story, a sort of more of a police procedural, sort of looking at someone who is doing copycat killings in the Jigsaw style, targeting police officers, and they've got to figure out who it was. And there's the usual, people turning up in pigs' masks and robes. There's elaborate traps. Now, Lee, I know that our friend on the podcast, Kim, we unfortunately can get her on this episode, but I know that at the weekend she did a rewatch of all 8 Saw movies, and then went to see Spiral. Did you rewatch any of the Saw movies in the run up to seeing this one, just to kind of familiarize yourself with what was going on in the story Not that it turned out to actually be needed.
No, I didn't. I mean, I actually didn't even realize this was a film until about a few weeks ago. I have no idea how this just completely passed me by, that this was going to be a thing. I remember just sort of hearing about it like maybe a month or so ago, and I don't know what mute filters I must have on Twitter, because like I have a hell of a lot. But I was like, there's a new Saw film coming out, like, and I didn't even realize this had been like a delayed film. All these different things. But no, I didn't. I looked at my letterbox and I was surprised that out of the, I think it's the 8 films that there was 2 I hadn't seen. I think it was 5 and 6, and I'd seen all the rest. I remember going to see the first one actually in Aberdeen and being absolutely blown away by the twist ending, you know, as the Jigsaw, Tobin Bell got up at the end, and I remember just that experience in the cinema, being genuinely shocked and surprised and going, yep, that is really, really impressive. So yeah, I was really impressed by that. And no, I kind of had no idea about what had kind of happened. I knew Jigsaw was properly dead. I knew that much. But after I kind of watched Spiral, I went back and watched one of these like IGN YouTube videos where it's like everything that's happened in Saw so far, and it was like a 10-minute spell, and I was like, oh my god, that happened. And oh yeah, I remember that trap or that little moment. I was like, oh my god, a lot went on, and like there was a lot of like, this all happened and then this person came up, and like none of it has left a strong impression, apart from I remembered much of the first one and that there was a pit of needles in the second one.
Yeah, it's odd that the first one, I think, is a fantastic film. There's not many sort of times that I can say that a plot twist has properly surprised me, but that one did. Yeah, like you say, when he gets up off the floor and you realise that he's been there the whole time, it's just like, I was like, what? I mean, I feel sometimes pretty good at being able to guess twists and stuff like that, but this was a film, I think, where, because this was such an unknown in terms of, it wasn't a franchise by that point. No one was really expecting anything from it. So there wasn't this huge thing about, oh, you've got to see Saw. You're not going to believe the twist that happens again. Because when someone says it's a twist, you normally start looking for it, and then sometimes you can guess it. But that one was brilliant. I thought it was, it had some of the best traps. You start off with like the reverse bear trap one, like you say, in Saw 2, which was still a very good sequel. You've got like you say, the needle pit one is impressive. I think Saw 3's got the pig cuts one, and then it sort of lost its way, I think, with the fact that Jigsaw was probably dead by that point, and you've got a couple of his disciples sort of doing it, but it was not really about teaching people a moral lesson about wanting to live and seeing what they've been missing. It was basically just people using it for revenge, and it was all about how elaborate and gory we can make these traps, and it kind of sort of lost some of the genius behind the first one. So it was interesting to see them sort of going down a different route with this one. But for me, I ended up just being really disappointed. I think I was like, in my initial tweet coming out of the cinema, I was like, that feeling of being back in the cinema, switching off your phone, switching off from everything, just enjoying the movie for 2 hours, 5-star. The movie itself, 1-star. Because I think as a Saw movie, it didn't really work. I mean, I do still enjoy the moment when the sort of Charlie Clouser's "Hello Zep" refrain sort of pops up at the end, as the sort of the whole reveal of how it's done and who's behind it all comes about. But the problem for me was, it was so incredibly obvious who it was going to be. I think there was people, even like when the trailer dropped about 8 months ago or something, they were like, well, I'd bet my mortgage that it's going to be this guy, and I would have won big, because it was. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but yeah, it was just really disappointing, the fact that it didn't work as a Saw movie, and then it didn't work as a police procedural movie, because the detectives seemed very incompetent. They kept walking into traps. They always went in alone. You never had any backup. And then also, it was incredibly obvious who the killer was, because, someone who uses someone's phone is like, well, that's kind of a giveaway. And then, if you don't ever see a body, I mean, come on. There are ways to get around that. If you don't actually 100% see a body or see them killed, then they're probably not. So, therefore, that was me. I mean, what did you make of the ending of it and the reveal, without giving it away?
Yeah, all too predictable. Like, I didn't take long to figure out, like, that's the person that's going to be behind the whole thing. I mean, I mean, it was ultimately a pretty disappointing film. I think the problem with the Saw movies, and this is going a bit off from memory, is like, you know, the first one in particular was very DIY with these traps. It was a very simple thing. You know, you're chained, you've got a saw, how do you get out of it? You know, ingenious, it builds tension. Whereas they've all become kind of silly, and it verges on like sort of steampunk designs where you look at the person that is behind the whole thing and you're like, they couldn't have invented that, they couldn't have done that. And like that takes you out of it. But I think there's something, if like, I think there could be an interesting element where it's like perhaps more DIY, you know, very kind of, still can be very gruesome, but very kind of put together traps. But the one thing I'll say for Saw that I thought was really, really surprising is that the film leans into this like all cops are bastards image, like plot. Like all these police officers are corrupt. Chris Rock is a one man kind of going up against it, and like the killer is targeting corrupt police. And I thought that was incredibly interesting. Like there's been police crimes, brutality for, you know, through the entire time that it's existed. You know, it's completely built into the system. But I was watching that thinking, like, this is the first film out in, you know, within the back of in and around a year. You know, we see it today, we're recording, it's been a year since George Floyd's death, and we all know the kind of consequences that came out of that, you know, renewed Black Lives Matter protests, everything that kind of went along with that. Like, that's all there. And in this time, that film should have come out just before then. And you kind of watch the film now going, that's a really interesting angle to watch it in. It's like, these cops are dirty. They have done horrible things. Am I meant to feel bad that they're being tortured and so on? No, probably not. And that's a really interesting question to ask the audience, and especially in the past year with the debates we've had about defund the police, you know, what's even happened here in the UK regarding kind of the police. It's very interesting that a mainstream movie is being so front and center with all cops are bastards. I have so much respect for the film.
Not Chris Rock.
No, not Chris Rock. Yeah, but like it leans into that so strongly. It's like, wow, that is bold, and I kind of respect Spiral for that. That I'm having that internal monologue and debate and tying Spiral into the climate that we're in. You know, fair play to the film. It's landed at an interesting sweet spot for audience members, provoking that kind of debate and discussion, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. I think it was scheduled to come out, I think, April or very early May 2020. So it would have come out just before this whole thing. And it was interesting sort of seeing this movie when Chris Rock himself was quite critical. You know, there was like a speech or something about cops. You know, they say it's, you know, it's not all cops. It's just a few bad apples. And it's like, well, you know, pilots. You know, you wouldn't, you know, just because you had a few bad apples, but they would crash an entire plane, you know, if they were bad pilots. So therefore, you know, you can't really, it's quite interesting. And then I was sort of hearing that and then sort of thinking, but you're playing a cop in your next movie. That's quite interesting. Because, I mean, I was sort of aware of that when watching it as well, and wondered if there was maybe the possibility if this film would have worked if they'd gone back and done reshoots and stuff. Because, I mean, you know, there's clearly like a lot of, within the Saw universe, you know, fans of Jigsaw and stuff like this, and Disciples. There's probably like websites dedicated to him, stuff like that. It was almost like you could have recast the Jigsaw figure as like a sort of almost anti-hero, you know, with the public potentially being on side with this Jigsaw character for targeting dirty cops and trying to, you know, clean up the system and stuff like that. I'm sure there would have been actually a bit of public support for him in what he was doing, so it would have been interesting to do. Obviously, it would have basically been almost shelving the entire film, going back and then reshooting a lot of it as well. But yeah, no, I mean, it did have an interesting angle, which, I mean, a lot of films, I think, just from the sheer length of delay and stuff they've had, are being reassessed slightly differently. Any film which just happens to have been sort of involving like a pandemic or sort of an illness or a virus or something coming out now, it's impossible not to see these films independent of where they used to be. I think they're always going to be now viewed within the lens of COVID and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting. But I mean, ultimately, I was disappointed. I mean, it sets itself up for another one. I mean, are you keen to see another episode in the Saw franchise, or should it be a case of game over?
No, not really. Like, but based on the fact I've seen all of them but two, I will somehow probably go along and see it. But yeah, like it does set up a sequel, but like it's more of the same. I know they've announced a Saw 10, which seems to be provoking some confusion. Like, is Spiral actually Saw 9? Is Saw 10 something separate? Yeah, it's very confusing. I think like there is like a gem of an idea within Spiral that could have been really interesting, but it's all kind of tied in with the usual Saw rubbish, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that we probably will get a Saw 10 in some form or another, whether it's a Spiral 2 or Saw 10, because I think I saw today that Spiral's relative mediocre success in the States has pushed the Saw franchise over $1 billion worldwide. So I mean, that's like one Marvel movie these days, but for a horror franchise, I think that's actually pretty good. Although I did read that the Conjuring franchise is apparently the highest grossing horror franchise of all time, which I didn't expect, but then realised that they're including things like The Nun and The Curse of La Llorona. So that's a film which I've got a ticket for at the weekend, so I'll be going to see that. But I mean, we both saw a couple of classic movies on the big screen, so cinemas were reopening. A lot of stuff was made available to them, whether it's like films like Nomadland and stuff like that, which are coming on the big screen, having already been on streaming. We've got a few new releases. Families are very excited to see Peter Rabbit 2, or just very excited to be able to have something to take their kids to. I think if there was maybe a bit more choice, it probably wouldn't have done as well. But I mean, like you said, you saw like several classic films when cinemas reopened, sort of September, October last time. I mean, is it nice to have the option to see some sort of classics that you've never seen on the big screen before? Is it nice to have that sort of flexibility compared to Peter Rabbit, say, being on 8 out of the 10 screens at your Cineworld?
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Like, I wish there was a bit more. Like, I loved it in October when it was like a mix of all these kind of horror films, and then sort of last summer they had like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, some Nolan films which were really popular. I finally got to see the original Matrix in the cinema. There was loads of different choices like that. I know for some people it was their first time seeing Star Wars as well, and one of the classics. So I like that as well. It's been a bit more limited this time around, and I suspect with the huge range of films that we're going to get in the coming weeks, things like Quiet Place 2, then we've got Cruella, and then not long after that we're going to have Fast and the Furious 9, is it? Yeah. So like these films are going to like take up the screens, and then there'll be a little bit of space left over for some of the other ones. So I think we're going to have to say goodbye quite quickly to retro screenings, unless you're going to somewhere like the Prince Charles in London, or maybe, I don't think it will even be the case with places like the Film House or Belmont in Aberdeen at the moment, because those films bring in a bit of an audience, but they're not going to be as popular with the kind of their typical crowd as your Sound of Metals, Nomadlands, and First Cow. And ultimately, those are the films that we need to make sure people are going to see in those type of cinemas.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be really sort of interesting to see what the independent cinemas do over the summer, because we've already seen a lot of talk over the last sort of 6 months, even when cinemas haven't been open, about the theatrical windows. It's pretty much guaranteed now that the 90-day theatrical window is gone. We're now looking at, I believe for a lot of the big studio films, we're looking at a 45 day window. However, if it reaches a certain amount of box office, that can be cut to a 30-day window. Independent cinemas we're never really going to be playing something like, I mean, if they were lacking in content and decided to play Fast and Furious 9, let's say the film has decided to do it because it's got a scene set in Edinburgh, they would never be playing for that for 90 days anyway. They would be lucky to get maybe 2 weeks out of that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think there's a huge sort of stockpile of sort of smaller independent films coming out. Obviously, there would have been plans for this last year, given the fact that we've got the Euros and we're meant to have the Olympics and stuff like that, so there would have been a lot of counter programming. So it's going to be interesting to see what we've got. I'm hoping to see Sound of Metal at the Belmont when it reopens next week. I'm hoping to see Censor on the big screen, a big horror film which I've been banging on about for months. Got a fantastic trailer. It seems, yeah, there's a lot of good horror films coming out at the moment. We've got, like, say, Conjuring, there's Quiet Place and stuff like that. They've decided to go now rather than waiting for October, which is, your natural sort of thing. But again, we'll have more back then on with Candyman and stuff like that. So, I mean, out of the other sort of films which you saw, is there anything you wanted to recommend to people who are, feeling safer about going to the cinemas? I mean, all these sort of safety measures are still in place. Every second row's booked off. There'll be like 2 seats in between every booking. Masks should be worn unless you're having a giant popcorn and drink as well. Hand sanitizer and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, I'm guessing that you felt fairly safe to be going back.
Yeah, I felt incredibly safe, and I get my first dose of vaccine next week, which is fantastic. I'm going to go see First Cow on Monday, followed by vaccine on the Tuesday, and then hopefully I've not got any mad side effects, so I'm going to go see Minari the following day. But yeah, I know this will sound ridiculous to give a shout out to the Academy Award winning best film Nomadland, a little film people might have heard of. That was a film I was not disappointed. I was like, I didn't think it was as good as people were shouting about last year. Like, I watched it on my laptop, I got a screener, it didn't screen to my TV. Like, it wasn't the film's fault, it was just not the best setup for watching a film like that, which makes total sense. And I watched and I thought, yeah, that's a good 4 out of 5 film. I liked it, it's solid. But I went to see it in the cinema on Friday, and it just reminds you about why the big screen is so good. Like, just seeing those vistas that Chloe Zhao had kind of captured, the beautiful cinematography, and it reminds you, like, you can watch a film at home and you can resonate with things, you can maybe feel a bit emotional by it, but like, there's something about being in a big screen and you've got Frances McDormand's face looking down on you, that kind of that's magic. I mean, I wasn't in the best of spirits last week. I was really tired, I've been a bit stressed lately, and there was just something about like watching that film of like seeing a character struggle and suffer, and she's looking at you, you're looking at her, and that's what cinema is. There's no distraction of phones around you or light creeping in, or there's a bit of dust on your TV cabinet that's getting in the way. You can just properly be immersed in a film, and Nomadland, what is an immersive experience? It is a proper journey through the western states of America, and this character's odyssey of kind of dealing with the loss of her America and that generation. And it was a really moving experience to revisit Nomadland. And I'd said it to plenty of people last year. I was like, I would rank it like mid-tier of the Oscar contenders. I had some of the other films a bit placed higher. But yeah, like, it reminded me, like, that's, you'll never beat the cinema for an experience like that. Absolutely not at all. And I was so glad I got to see Nomadland in that way. And I'm buzzing to see Sound of Metal next week, which I think me and you both, from watching it the first time, would be like, can't wait to see that in a cinema. Like, how is that going to sound on like a good speaker system? The same with Minari. I enjoyed that. I found it quite emotional at home, but what's it going to be like in a cinema screen? And First Cow, 10 months ago I watched it for the first time on digital in the height of lockdown, and I was like moved by people milking a cow. What am I going to be like on Monday, returning to like one of my favorite cinemas since October last year, when I went to see Aminet or at the film house at part of the London Film Festival? Cannot wait to go back and see that. So I think these films are going to be my cinema experience, and like, I think probably we'll end up chatting about it next week. Like, we'll probably be seeing like your Cruellas and Conjurings, etc. this weekend, but next week, that's back to the movies. That's my Tom Cruise posing with the poster in the film house foyer. Like, there's the cow. I'm going to watch it.
The cow's not on the poster. I think it's a terrible poster for a movie. I'm like looking at the 2 lead actors and I'm like, which one's the cow in this?
Oh my god, I just assumed the cow was between them. No, my god. Oh my god.
It's like, where's the cow? But yeah, no, you're going to be crying into your oily cakes next Monday.
Yes.
I know what you mean about Nomadland, because it's a film which I think I watched it as a screener on my phone, because that's all I could watch the London Film Festival on, and I maybe gave it 3 out of 5. I wasn't sort of all that blown away, but I think the sort of Chloe Zhao, her cinematography, it's just stunning, and I think being able to see that on a big screen would certainly impact my view. I think I was in a bit of a lull around about that time at the London Film Festival. I think Another Round was maybe the only sort of film which I got like a real sort of positive reaction out. I think I gave that one 5 stars, but I was sort of watching, when you're watching sort of 12, 13 films over like a week and a half, all of them on your phone and stuff like that, it's just not the same as, like you say, as being in the cinema. I mean, I've sort of often compared it, it is one of my sort of things which helps with my mental health and whatever, because like you say, if you're watching a film on your TV or on your phone, then I think there's no escaping that you're still in your front room. There's distractions. I mean, I've got my cats who might be wandering around, or you might sort of check your phone and you get a text, or you might want to, like, what's that actor in again? Only I'm just going to go on IMDb and stuff like that. Whereas if I'm in the cinema, I put my phone away, it's on silent, I'm not looking, I'm just engaging with the film, and nothing else is going on. If you're lucky enough, you won't have any distractions within the screen, whether it's people talking, shining their light as they're walking up the stairs, trying to find their seats, rustling of bags, popcorn, etc. If you're lucky enough, especially now, the cinemas are still reasonably quiet, you might get away with that. Quiet Place, sort of part 2 is coming up. I know that when I watched it the first time, it was one of the sort of best cinema experiences I'd had, and the fact that everyone sort of empathised with the characters so much that they seemed almost scared to make a noise in the screen, and it was probably the silentest screening I've ever been in, and I look forward to that next week as well. And I'm interested to see some of these films on the big screen and see if I give a reappraisal. I mean, Sound of Metal was my top pick for the Oscars, and like you say, the sound mix, seeing how that feels in a cinema auditorium is going to be fantastic. And if I've got time, I'll be looking at other ones as well. But I mean, you're very lucky to have a Cineworld which is progressive enough to include all the Oscar-winning film Nomadland, whereas I've just got multiple screenings of Peter Rabbit 2 and stuff at the moment. So I've got to wait for the Belmont next week before I can catch the higher quality films.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of like, I don't know how to describe this first wave of films. Like, it's just a bit rubbish, but it's like, I don't know.
No, I completely agree with you. When I saw the Cineworld lineup, I was like, I mean, I think apart from Peter Rabbit 2 and the other films which I saw, I mean, a lot of it I'd already seen. So Godzilla vs. Kong seen, Judas vs. Messiah I'd seen. I mean, obviously we were both very lucky to be members of BAFTA Scotland and were able to access a wide range of screeners between sort of November and April for the Oscars. So, I mean, we had already seen everything, but it was like, what out of that do I really want to go and see again on the big screen? So, I mean, I was thinking about Godzilla vs. Kong, just, to see two giant creatures batter the crap out of each other. Yeah, that might have been entertaining, but I did go and see, in the end, I think it was Those Who Wish Me Dead, which was, I suddenly realised we'd gone back to the mid-90s where, every sort of major Hollywood star would get a film where they basically play a member of the emergency services or something like that who goes through an accident and suffers PTSD and then is then put in a situation involving criminals where they basically have to overcome their fears and save the day again. So this was Angelina Jolie as a firefighter who lost some people in an accident and is now, PTSD in there, but, a boy's found in the woods who's escaping a couple of assassins because he knows something about a criminal case. And it's just like, I mean, it was fine, but, it's not get me back into the cinema, this is what I want to see. And it was more surprising the fact that it was basically scripted and directed by Taylor Sheridan, who had written Sicario and also Wind River, two of the best sort of thrillers of the last sort of 10 years. So this just felt slightly underwhelming. So, I mean, is Fast 9 going to be the saviour of cinema? Is it going to be Black Widow? Or is it going to be something else? What do you think is going to be the saviour of cinema this summer?
You'd kind of have to expect a Marvel movie would do the biz. I mean, I'm looking forward to Quiet Place 2. I might see it this weekend. Black Widow, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'm kind of a bit burned a bit on Marvel at the moment, but it'll be good to see something like that, I guess. I don't really know what's got me excited. I feel like the films I want to see are a bit later in the year, but the thing is, even if it's just like a couple of different things I can just go see a week, I'm okay with that at the moment. yeah, I think it's going to be a little while yet. But I think some of the films, I mean, we've only just briefly watched it. The new Edgar Wright trailer just dropped today, and like I think later in the year we're going to just have like we are going to be back to like a weekly episodes where it's like this big release or this exciting indie movie. There's going to be so much to talk about, which is really, really exciting, as opposed to kind of films where it's like, that was fine, I guess. You know, it was something. I think, yeah, the coming weeks will be just, I think, getting people back into the cinemas, and the numbers seem to be doing pretty well. I saw last Monday the box office numbers were pretty impressive, and you take that into account that things like Cineworld hadn't opened yet, there was no Picture House, for example. So, you know, people are keen to get back. So yeah, I'm hopeful that if we can just get through the next few months safely, we're going to have an amazing second half of the year. And it's a shame we don't have like a Edinburgh Film Festival or something this summer to just tick things over a little bit, but bring on the late summer and into the second half of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that some distributors are probably still slightly apprehensive about the potential of another lockdown and whatever, which is probably fair given the government's handling of the situation and stuff like that, because, you know, when we were back in cinemas at the end of July last year and Tenet was out, it was meant to be that was it, we're back for good now, and then of course that didn't happen, so they're probably still a little bit wary. But yeah, I think, like you say, I think from like September onwards, I think that's when, you know, things are really gonna kick up a gear. Like you say, the last Night and Soul trailer, which just dropped today, looks fantastic. I mean, you know, Marvel, you know, we went a whole year without anything, and then I think we've got about 4 Marvel films before the end of the year. We've got Black Widow, Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, then The Eternals, and then a new Spider-Man movie. I mean, we'll probably be over Marvel by the end of the year. There'll be just too many of them. We've also got the Bond film to come out. I mean, I was thinking, you know, a couple of days ago, I mean, there's no way that any film's ever going to get to $1 billion again. But then Fast and Furious 9 does $160 million in China in one weekend. So it's like maybe there is that pent-up demand to get out and see the cinema. And, you know, Vin Diesel will get people back to the movies. Who knows? But I think we've got reasons to be optimistic, and you know, it all depends. You know, we've got the film festivals coming up over the summer. We've got Cannes, which I'm still, at this moment, fingers crossed, maybe going to. I've got my accreditation, I've got my flights booked, I've got my hotels booked, but it also depends on an amber green situation, and then also, which I discovered at the moment makes it inaccessible to me, is if you go to France at the moment, you have to self-isolate for 7 days before you're able to do anything. So that kind of puts me out for going to Cannes for 3 days. So if that changes by the end of June, then maybe I'll be in luck. I'll be double vaccinated hopefully by then, so I'll be fine to go anywhere. I'll be invincible. But yeah, like I say, Edinburgh might have a digital film festival, you know, in August. But then, of course, London Film Festival are basically looking at a full back to in-person, maybe even no space between seats. And I think that's kind of what we're all hoping for. We've got films like June to come out as well, which, you know, was now hinted at that it might turn up at Cannes. Guaranteed probably the day after I leave, but never mind. But yeah, I think you're feeling hopeful.
I'm excited, yeah. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Fast 9. I can't wait to see Edinburgh on the big screen like that. It's going to be amazing. Like we both, I remember going to a meeting at the City Chambers, and there was like what's Vin Diesel's character called? Dom
Toretto, yeah.
Dom Toretto. His like car was just sitting there. It was like amazing. I cannot wait to see my city in a Fast and the Furious film, and it's be our city, unlike our Glasgow rivals, which had to make do with just being London. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Fast Furious 9. How could you not look at that trailer and all the mad stuff with magnets? Like even like a film hipster could not look at that and think, nah, not for me. Like I can't wait to see what they do with magnets.
Exactly, and it's like you say, it's Edinburgh being Edinburgh, which, you know, is, you know, you've already lucked out with Avengers: Infinity War. You know, Glasgow is recently had the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, but it's going to be Gotham. Even up in Aberdeen, we got a movie filming up here. We got the Tetris movie, but Aberdeen sadly only resembles Soviet Union, Cold War, Russia. So there's that. But I believe you're also going to be getting another Batman, but you're going to get the alternative Batman movie. You're going to get The Flash, apparently filming in Edinburgh. Whether or not you get any of the Batmen up in there, whether it's Michael Keaton or Ben Affleck, I guess we'll have to see. I'm sure you'll keep us up to date, and you'll be stalking the superheroes around the city, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah. I will look to bring you the first exclusive interview with Michael Keaton on the Nerd Party.
Well, I will hold you to that as a promise. So, yeah, let us know, if you listen to this podcast, if you've made it back to the cinema this week in America or in the UK. Let us know what you've been seeing, what you'd recommend, and what you're looking forward to the rest of the year. We'll be back next week with a few more new films to talk about. I'm seeing Cruella and Conjuring. Apparently, Lee isn't too fond of the idea of a 143-minute prequel origin movie for a Disney character, but I guess we'll have to see what happens. But anyway, take care, stay safe out in the cinemas, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.